We're going to close out the afternoon by talking about one of your favorite topics. And I say that because every time we have a conversation at our executive network meetings or run an article on GreenBiz about engaging employees around sustainability, the volume raises, the excitement level goes up, the conversation gets much richer. So here to join me in a conversation on that, please welcome from PwC, Corporate Responsibility Leader, Shannon Schuyler. So Shannon, let's start with, what do you do? What's your role at PwC?
I think probably like many people out there, we have every role known to man. And so some days it's around employee engagement, and other days it's around your foundation, and other days it's around environmental stewardship, and other days it's around pro bono, and last week it was about immigration. So pretty much
what is it today?
Well, today it's about engagement. Okay. And coming after Gabe is a perfect setup for talking about employee engagement.
Why?
Because so many of the things that he was talking around about behavioral change. And I think we have to figure out how do you take those types of things, whether it's through gamification or making sure that we're connected to what our organization does, or we're doing something consistently throughout the life cycle, or that we're continually improving how we look at engagement because employees have changed. We have a very different workforce now than we did 10, 15 years ago. So what does that look like to keep reinventing yourself? And I guess for so long, people have focused around this engagement piece being just nebulous. Like, you can't measure it, so let's talk about a lot of really nice anecdotes and some nice stories, and it's great for videos, but really nothing was tangible, and it was really hard to go into your C-suite and say, this is something that's valuable, because everyone feels it. It feels good to do good things, but to really be able to put numbers around it brings this whole area to a different level.
Yeah, it's one of those things we were talking about shared value earlier today. It's one of those great ideas, engaging employees, that everyone thinks is a good idea, but getting down to it is obviously a lot tougher. So how did this become strategic at PwC?
Well, for us, and I know there's many other people in the audience that are like this, we're a professional services firm. We don't make anything. And so we're not going to improve the things that we do around our organization because we're going to make a widget better, because it's just not going to happen. So everything that we have to do, really our people are at the foundation of that. And so whether we're going to try to drive efficiencies, whether we're going to try to deliver better service to our client or our brand, it has to come from our people doing it. And you either have the chance to sit kind of in your ivory tower and try to do engineered solutions that you're spending millions and millions of dollars every year on trying to implement, or you figure out a way that how can you get your people actually engaged in doing these activities, and then not just be engaged, but actually engaged in a way that you can reflect has people staying longer, they perform better, and they're tangible numbers, just not nice stories to tell.
Right, but you've specifically been using this as a sustainability engagement tool. How did that become an important part of the mix?
Well, you know, it's interesting. What we've really found is our people want to be engaged and want to have the ability to control the things that happen from a social and environmental standpoint. They see what the company can do, but there's so much more that they can do when they're actually involved. And it's both from what Gabe and what Gabby said. We have people who are coming in the door as new recruits and our retired partners who are all actively involved in these types of things, and they want their hands on, and they want to make sure that their fingerprints are a part of it, that they're not just being told this is what you need to do in order to do something social or environmentally responsible for the organization. They want to be a part of what those decisions are, and then have the company figure out how can we put that in some kind of strategic way with enough flexibility to allow them to do those things, because that's what's going to drive purpose in their job, but then also making sure that it's aligned with what we're doing.
But I think the key thing here is that you have started to crack the nut on how you measure this.
We have, and there are a couple of people here from PwC, and Jeff Senny and Kenya Haupt, and they've done amazing work with trying to figure out what does this actually look like and how do you measure it. And so instead of just saying we can look at different areas of where we retain people, I mean, we know that last year that we were able to retain people who were able to participate in CR, and we look at this in two ways. One, participate means you did something once, right? That's great. You participated in on a board seat, in Project Belize, on a green team. And then we also look at people who are what we call engaged, that participate a number of times. And look at the difference between people who don't do anything, people who participate, and then people who are engaged. And we see a difference between how long those people stay at an organization and the people who were participating versus not at all. There was a 5% difference in turnover, which equates to almost $165 million.
To PwC?
To PwC.
In terms of replacement costs and training costs and lost...
all the above. So we equate it to about $100,000 per person who leaves. And so when we look at that, that's real dollars. We also know years ago when we started doing volunteer programs and we started to try to track performance and who were the people who were actually volunteering, the people who were volunteering were the people who had some of the lowest ratings because they weren't utilized on clients, and so they would be out there volunteering. And so let me tell you what a good story that was. And so in 2007, here we're like, this is great, our people love it, our best people love it, and we did the math, and no. It was our okay to not great performers were the ones who were doing all of our volunteering. And so we started to rework the programs to say, well, what would it look like if we actually reached out to the strongest performers? What type of experience would they need to have for them to realize and for them to figure out how do you balance out utilization versus spending time during the workday engaged in something around CR, because we have our people do it during the workday. And now what we find out is the majority of people who do participate are those that are the highest performers. And so we've totally changed that, which is a much different story that we can now tell.
Well, let's get more specific. What are they participating in? What are they actually doing? You said doing one thing, doing another. What are these things?
Well, we have kind of a lengthy list of different things that are related to CR, and it could be everything from a green team, it could be Project Belize, which is an activity that we do, it could be volunteering, it could be a board seat. All those different types of activities. It could be pro bono work, being a lone staff for a nonprofit. And then what we're able to do now is to go in and look individually at those activities and then see the nuances. So we know there's a lot more connectivity, especially for staff that are managers and above to board seats, because it's something that they do more regularly. And so we know that if we beef up our board seat program and we do more funding for people, that actually makes them more connected to the firm, and it actually follows this retention and performance. We also know that things like Project Belize, that is 3 to 4 days, go away, teach financial literacy in Belize, that actually really helps the millennials, and they're really focused. We know the more people who can participate in that, the better. And we also were able to find out that our interns that we used to send to Belize, we actually don't have a higher conversion rate if they go, so now we're sending more full-time staff. So we can actually use this as a lever to figure out what's working and what's not, which is a huge factor when you look at how do you really make this a part of the culture, because it's not just a one hit. It's throughout their career, and what are the types of things that you can actually do, and what can the firm come and look to CR for the answers as they see these different things that are happening.
So I'm guessing you don't have a hard time finding people who want to go to Belize to teach financial literacy. But what about some of the other things? How much of selling do you have to do to explain around volunteerism or nonprofit board seats or any of the other activities?
You know, there's not a whole lot of selling to it, because one of the things, and I had mentioned it before over at the sidebar, is that if it's not something that your people are going to gravitate to and ultimately they're going to be responsible for running, it's not sustainable. And so when you have a program, it has to be something that they're bought into, whether it's the green teams, and so we can build a whole framework around it and we can lift it off the ground. But at the end of the day, after 2 years, if it wasn't something that our people in the local offices were actually going to own, that we could fund, but they were going to run with and figure out what to do, then it wasn't worth it, because we're a small team and that's not going to work. And so I think it's finding those types of things. And so volunteering, that's not hard to do, right? So we make sure that we don't spend a lot of time. They can go and do that. We make sure that they have the framework and they have the ways to be able to capture their time, et cetera.
It's interesting that some of the things you're talking about do not fall under the rubric of greening the company, that these are really not about what can we do at PwC or even its clients, but these are about things you can do in your life, in your world, in your community. How does that translate into productivity or retention? It's hard to make that connection. Can you explain it?
Well, I mean, for us, it's looking at, people want to have a purpose, right? They want to figure out, what does my job mean that's bigger than necessarily going into work every day and sitting and working with a client? And I think what we need to figure out is, what does that look like in the confines of PwC? So you're hired in a certain way, we take you through the same leadership ladders that we're trying to bring people in. How can we make sure that we're understanding what motivates you and what you can use your skills for that may be beyond your daily work, so that you really have purpose? And doing that makes people realize that it's not just about them, but they can take their skills and their knowledge and their interests, leverage the firm, and then go out and do it. And so being able to offer those types of things allows us to have people want to stay, because then they see the other value that they have, and it's bringing this bigger thing. And it's a great quote that's out there about, culture eats strategy for breakfast. I mean, if your culture is not done and together, you can have the greatest business strategy, and you can have your CFOs out there and saying this is the line of business you're going to go after. It's not going to work. And what we've said is CR is really part of our purpose. It's part of our fabric. It's part of our culture. If it becomes your culture, it becomes something that you want to continuously improve, and something that you're making sure you're driving consistently through the organization.
I just heard 1,000 tweets about culture eating strategy. You all put out a report just this last couple days, I think, on this topic. And in that report, you and Jeff and your great crew put that together. You talked about the fact that 10 to 15% of the workforce overall is disconnected, costing companies billions and billions of dollars. Is corporate responsibility a tool for engaging these people, or are they hopeless?
No, what we have found is that it is. It is a tool, and it can be measured, and it can be leveraged in this way. You have to make sure that you're fitting it into your organization so it actually can be something that makes sense, that goes along with your mission, and it's not fake, and it's not a separate work group that's over in the side, but it's a part of your development process, it's a part of your learning and development process, it's a part of your recruiting process, it's a part of your alumni process. But it can keep, and what we're really seeing are that people are performing better. People are performing at a higher level when they're more engaged with the organization. They actually provide better service to our clients, which leads to more loyalty from our clients, which leads to more satisfaction from our people. So it really becomes this loop that you end up getting yourself in. And so I do believe it can be used. And I would challenge people to go and talk to their folks in human capital and talk to different groups that are responsible for your employees, and start to let them look at what are the pieces of your programs that they can leverage that can become a part of what their goals are. Diversity plays a huge role in this. When people look at diversity, one of the things that we've been able to see is that there is a difference, that minority staff do look at these programs more so than their other colleagues. And so there's ways to use this to really leverage your populations, and it's measurable.
Tell us a couple things that you think are important so that a company can do to show that it's not faking it, that it is being sincere in talking to employees about engaging around corporate responsibility.
I think there's a couple things. One of the things that we've really focused on is getting out of programs that we've had out there for a long time that aren't used very much, and we've kind of been the first at the table to say they're nice and they make a handful of people feel good, but we need to not do it. And so making sure that people see CR as a value add, and they're seeing it as tangibly connected to the strategy and not just some nice to have that's on the side. And I think your employees need to see that and feel that. I think it's also making sure that it's a part of the discussions, your annual review discussions, your onboarding, each time that people get together for trainings, that they see this, and that also your leadership is engaged in it, that they see that, for our CEO has a chance to go and he spoke in front of the investors conference in New York. He spoke about earn your future. Like, he has a chance to speak about anything, and that's what he spoke about, because it's something that he believes, and he believes that making sure we invest in our youth understanding financial responsibility is the only way that the investor community will be able to be sustainable. And so I think those things help employees say that's real.
I'm going to want to get to questions from Elaine in just a second, but we're going to have a great conversation here on Thursday around millennials. I hear on both sides of this that millennials are different in terms of how to work with them and engage them. And I also hear that they're no different from anyone else. What are you seeing?
I think millennials are different because they speak up more so than other people. I don't think that they're different. In fact, some of the biggest correlations we see are millennials to our more seasoned professionals. So the baby boomers and the millennials see a lot more value in I want to get more out of life than necessarily the generations that are in between. And so when we get down to Belize, for example, the people who build the best relationships are our new staff or our interns, and sometimes our retired partners, of which you would have never felt that they would have found a commonality, but they immediately do. So I think they're different, that they'll do less and they'll take less and they'll tell you they will. And before, I wasn't in a generation, if you didn't like something, I would never tell.
And take less? I'm not sure what you're referring to.
That they will take less money if they're able to do more things. and they're very vocal about that. And I think just being vocal is very different than our generation. We would just take our lashings and go back to work the next day for the next hour, and now we're appalled that people are questioning it. But I don't think that that's different. We just didn't say it.
Well, I'm
I'm
flattered that you think that we're in the same generation, but not quite the case.
Come on.
Elaine, what do you got? What are you hearing?
The question was around metrics. So are there any other metrics in addition to turnover rates and expenses that you're saving?
We look at the difference between acceptance rates, and so we look at different activities that we do from a recruiting standpoint and look at the different activities. We look at, as you were mentioning, the turnover rates. We look at performance rating, and we also look at satisfaction through the various different surveys that we do.
Got another?
Yeah, no, there are a bunch of them here. A really active and hot topic, as we had talked about at Sidebar today. One question was about compensation. Not sure if you actually addressed this in terms of what do people actually get besides that community of employee engagers?
Well, it's interesting. This is definitely something that factors into the compensation process. So it's something that's talked about in our annual review committees of whether or not somebody should get additional bonus or incentives. There's a lot of different activities that we do during the year for people to be able to get awards for the things they do, whether it's through green teams or whether it's through environmental. We give a lot of more awards to people's charities as they volunteer more and they spend more time doing it. So it's a combination of compensation at the end of the year, really now being a part of the discussion that happens of what do you do in addition to your job. And it's becoming even more interesting with the increase in how much pro bono people are doing, to really see the skill development that's coming through their activities and how that's really directly tied to their compensation, because that's as if they were working on a formalized engagement.
Let's take one more from...
Yeah, so one question was really about the best ideas. So where have you gotten your best corporate responsibility ideas from, and do you have any favorite ideas that have come from an employee?
We have a very vocal employee network. And we have a lot of different tools for them between the different blogs we do, our Spark pages, we do an innovation challenge. So we get so many ideas from our people, and our people really being the ones. The other thing that we do is we have a CR Fellows program. So I know many departments out there, it's not very big. We have people rotate in from the client service practice anywhere from 3 months to 9 months and actually work and handle projects from start to finish. So if you want to do a project, you have some time, they come in, they get it up, they try to see if it runs. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. But it allows them to really be advocates and allows us to have extra hands to be able to work on some of the projects we planned, as well as start some new ideas and start to see if they can work.
So, before we run out of time in this very engaging conversation, if culture eats strategy for breakfast, what are some of the indicators in culture that a company might see that says, in effect, we're on the right path here with employee engagement? How does that change? What do you start to see a company do culturally?
You know, I think where you put these types of things even on the agenda, as far as it has become different, the stories, because now people feel the stories have been validated by data. The stories now are out there all the time, and our CEO talks about the stories because I think there's a sense of this is real. And so we're free to talk about it, and you can now share the lighthearted things that are happening out there. And I think the more people see that, in addition, it has to be, again, consistent. And so our folks, this isn't something that once a year people hear about. I mean, this is something that is a part of their day and a part of whether they're on an engagement team, one of the things they look for, or what does their client do around corporate responsibility and sustainability to build relationships there. It's around what they do when they're completing their performance reviews. It's what they do when they're working along somebody trying to decide what they're going to do that night, whether they're going to volunteer or go to a board meeting. So I think it just becomes a part of your daily culture. And if it does, then suddenly it seems that it's not going to go away, which is really important, especially for millennials. But that also is something that's real and something that's tangible and hopefully a part of the fabric of the organization.
And that it is an everyday kind of thing, and it's not just the third week in April.
Right.
Yeah. No, I think that's making it a part of the fabric and on a daily basis is key. Great. Well, there's going to be a great workshop on this tomorrow afternoon, so I encourage you to attend that. For now, please join me in thanking Shannon Schuyler.
Thank you.